Next Wave Gaming. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this week's Next Wave Gaming review. This time for the Wildcards after the SPL season. With us today, we have the solo laner from Agilitas, Confrey. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
We also have CrimsonWhite and Scotch737 and myself, Wolfpack89 from Next Wave Gaming. Real quick intro, for those of you who don't know, I'm Wolfpack89. Like I said, I do a lot of the site dev and social networking, reaching out to players, trying to get things going, and do some data entry and esports analysis for Next Wave. Crimson?
Hey everyone, I'm CrimsonWhite. I covered the NASPL for Season 1, and I'm covering EU Wildcards, and I feed and smite. Scotch?
I'm Scotch737. I do the video editing for Next Wave Gaming, and I also feed and smite, but I watch more smite than I play now. So.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Watching Smite is great.
What'd you say?
Watching Smite is great.
Oh yeah, man.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's no shame to not playing it.
Absolutely.
It's
The
amazing to have
esports
dual
scene-
streams.
The esports scene is doing really well right now, and that's why we're here, actually. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Crimson, of course, your favorite part. Anybody who's followed us knows this. Take us away, picks and bans.
So, we had another top 10 gods this week that we can talk about, and first thing I want to bring up is that Freya, Geb, Thor, and Ra all had 100% involvement.
Really?
None of which are surprising picks, but they were all picked or banned in every game. And then you have Serket with three bans and 2 picks. Rama with no bans, 4 picks. Athena with a ban and 3 picks. Aphrodite with 4 bans, 0 picks. Zhonghui with 3 bans and 2 picks. And Vamana, the one I want to talk about the most, with 0 picks and 0 bans and 5 picks. Vamana did very, very well, just to be quite honest with you. Proxy QQ played him this week, as did 3 from Maniac, SK Soul Laner. And honestly, I agree with the DM Brandon said in that Agilitas Potato Boys game. I don't understand why this character hasn't been picked up more. I really hope that how well the baby did in the EU Wildcard spills over into all competitive play, because the Avatar of Vishnu is just really, really strong.
Yeah, the Vamana pick is definitely not a surprise. It's a very strong pick, and we have seen Maniac rocking it quite a few times. It was just a question of whether or not we could deal with him going into the drafting phase. So we had it all planned out, what we did, and we had a very good drafting phase, we felt like. Yeah, it's just you gotta find a way to control or at least manage the Vamana in all stages of the game. So we just, I guess, kind of neglected the last phase, the late game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where he really shines, and most people just forget about it.
Yeah. It's really hard to stop his farm. I really don't think you can really pick against it. If you didn't ban it. Maybe Callie has something to do with it. Maybe
Yeah,
only if you have a weakening curse on a team.
Best way definitely is to have a hyper carry. Just try and burst him down with a creeping.
I'm surprised we didn't see any Loki picks this week. Loki was not picked or banned in any game in the EU Wildcards, because Loki can burst out of a mana pretty quickly.
Loki is a great pick, but he's also very risky. Depending on how the game goes, Loki can get really not useless, but very hard to do anything with, especially in team fights if you fall back. He's more of the split pusher, more than anything, and then going in to pick people off. And he's just it's very hard to do that if the game goes south very quickly.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this real quick, because we all know one of the best split pushers in this game is Apollo. Like, even after the nerf, phenomenal split push. So here's a question for you: if you don't get Apollo, do you look at Loki more heavily?
And that's definitely something you can do, especially if you want to go something with a TP strat, like teleport to towers on Loki, who could definitely do some heavy split pushing. So yeah, that could be something to look after if you don't have Apollo.
Right, assuming Apollo's not there.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I've noticed, you know, in the difference in watching EU players, you know, in the EU side of the SPL and even this week's Wildcards, and then going back to the NA, is you don't see a lot of Loki picks in the EU, and it's because I think the EU is more oriented around the team fight late game if it gets to late game. You know, if somebody's not 10,000 gold ahead, even then, you know, one fire giant still can turn the whole game. But
Right.
you know, and that's where, you know, I agree with you that Loki's kind of situational because the only thing he can do late game is either pick off the high damage mage, but how often is the high damage mage by itself?
Yeah, and that's the more say the more skilled the game gets, you know, the individual skill level, the harder it gets to play Loki, the more you have to play him perfectly, because you don't get people who walk out of position. You don't get to pick people off because everyone is moving together, playing like a team.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to go for those team comps that allow for 5v5 straight up team fights where you can take, because at the end of the game you have to get through the team to get to the Titan. You can't just split push your way.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. Two picks I noticed since I covered the NISPL for Season 1 that are really EU-centric are Aphrodite receiving 4 bans and no picks, and Zhonghui
Yes.
receiving 3 bans and 2 picks. Why do you think both are still so popular in EU, despite the fact they've fallen off in NA?
So I don't know why Afro has fallen off NA. Being an Afro player myself, I really enjoy playing her unless she gets counterpicked. That's why you see a lot of Afro bans, because you just don't want to deal with her. But you only see her picked like in the late stages of the drafting. It's because you can actually counter her rather easily. So
Yeah, Osiris,
It's-
Chang'e. I mean, so
yeah,
much
I mean
Spanish,
something like a Hebo with Divine Ruin just
Yeah,
really
that too, yeah.
just really bullies her in lane at the point where it really gets hard to deal with if your team is not ahead. So she's like this guard who is so hard to deal with, but you still don't want to pick up too early because the enemy team can work around and find ways to shut you down. So that's why you just see her banned, because you don't want to risk it.
Cool.
One final guy I want to talk about before we move on to talking about ADCs is Serket. We saw an attempt by Potato Boy solo laner Proxy QQ to play her in the solo lane, but
Oh, God.
other than that, we saw a couple of bans and a couple of jungle picks. Do you think there's a chance that Serket can work in solo? Obviously, it didn't work for the Potato Boys in that one game, but Serket is a very strong god. I don't think that she has the potential that Mercury had pre-nerf of being in all 3 or 2 lanes in the jungle, but I think that they just picked her to say, hey, Serket's really strong, we gotta put her somewhere.
Yeah. So this is not the first time Proxy has played Serket in solo. He has actually played it against me in one of the games in the challenges, and he actually dominated the lane. I was not prepared for that. So in the right matchup, yes, definitely you can pick her up. She's a very strong guard overall. I don't necessarily agree that she's a solo lane guard, because her clear, let's be honest, is not that great.
No.
It's more meant for the tree, the creeps in the jungle, you know, the way it works with the Deathbane, stuff like that. But she's definitely very safe. She has a lot of escapes, so I can see her being a potential pick for solo, just because she's so safe and her 1v1 is so great. So
Right.
against mages who don't respect the pick, which I didn't the first time I saw her, I didn't go any protections. So I was not happy about that game. But since then, I've not really been scared of it, because I know I can just chill in lane and go for a few defensive items and then just wait it out. But she's very, very hard to deal with. So yeah. I guess if you like her that much, then yeah, sure, go for her in solo as well.
Proxy's gonna pick whatever he wants.
Yeah, just don't forget your hog, because you're not gonna get a clear against the mage.
Yeah, you'll lose so much gold early.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that takes us right into the ADC role. Let's run over this real quick. Just running down the scores that we use at Next Wave Gaming. First place this week so far in EU is going to go to Ataraxia from Agilitas, 1708.
Boy.
Second place will be Reels EX at 1539. Third place, Suntouch at 1307, playing Uller all 3 games. And Shaggy Shank from Coast, maybe formerly from Coast. We'll see what happens here over the next day or so. At 986, Coast struggling in these wild cards, but Agilitas coming out strong on the ADCs. I mean, looking at Ataraxia's numbers, it has, some of the highest player damage per minute, the highest player damage per minute at 655. Reels is at 571, almost 100 above. And shredding towers at 122 structure damage per minute. Again, Reels EX behind at 96 structure damage per minute. So just very strong performance coming out from Ataraxia.
I think that the big difference here, when you look at the top 2 hunters for this week, which for Reels and Ataraxia, Reels averaged 3 assists a game. Ataraxia averaged over 10.
Yeah.
Ataraxia was involved in more team fights and just had a larger presence in the game.
Ataraxia's Rama.
Ataraxia's Rama
ridiculous.
is absurd.
Both time he played Rama, he won.
Those swords.
The times he played Rama, he won. You're correct. It's ban-worthy. Rama by himself is probably a god that's ban-worthy to begin with, but Ataraxia in particular on Rama.
And that's after the nerf.
Yeah, it's still ban-worthy.
That ult is just so powerful. It's powerful in team fights. Even if you lose a team fight and they're on the Gold Fury, it's still powerful to take down the support before they can, insta-hog it.
You need to hit it.
To talk a little bit about a player that isn't on Agilitas, I'd like to talk a little bit about Suntouch. Suntouch played Uller in all 3 games, which is conventionally not one of the strongest, just to face it, not one of the strongest ADCs in the game. Normally you say Rom, Apollo on her, and then maybe Uller, but Freya probably above all 3 of them if you're playing Freya ADC. I'd like to see him expand his god pool because Uller by himself is not a strong god, and I don't think that Uller brings enough to the table without having to build something like a Transcendence or a Jotuns or just a mana-sustaining item, and that means you delay your crit. I think there was a game this week where Suntouch didn't build a crit item. He built full pen, and he was shredding towers, but he wasn't killing any of his opponents, so he died.
I think I have to disagree with you on that. If I watched the games today with Suntouch, he played Uller very well. Uller is a well. When I play Uller, I build him kind of like I play Cupid. I view Cupid, Neith, and Uller in the same category. That they are burst hunters. They are not attack speed hunters. Even though his 2 gives him attack speed, I believe that they are casters. In other words, kind of like a mage hunter. And I kind of like, especially the game where they had Proxy go Xbalanque and solo, because after Xbalanque gets to level 7, he's good to go. You don't have to babysit him no more. And he had his Transcendence online then. He was good to go. And did you see the damage that was coming out between
I saw.
It's ridiculous.
I saw the damage that was putting out, and it was easily his best game of the week.
I mean,
it was also they were playing Coast.
There was a Circuit, I think it was, or somebody that had like 280 plus life, and his axe throw killed her. I mean, that was it. Just bam, done. Yeah. But I think he played very well. I just think maybe the game that they lost today, I think maybe the team positioning is a little off.
I just like to see him expand his god pool a little bit.
So going into why Suntouch picks up Uller, I think it's his reaction to the massive Hunter nerfs we've seen here with Freya, Ram, Apollo, basically the top 3 Hunters being nerfed. I think Uller is his preferred choice right now. That's what he's been practicing, and that's clearly showing because he's very good at playing that particular god.
Yeah.
And I, to most extent, agree with the way he's building him, because it also supports the way he's playing him. So yeah, like the way you build auto attack and ability oriented, and then Ula is definitely the guard to go with.
All right, to move into our support scores. So we have another Agilitas player, Kanye Life, leading support and leading by a lot, having 1782, followed by Badja of SK Gaming at 1466, then Kumbhakarna, Durgis at 1437, and Princess Tomato bring up the rear at 1322.
Kumbhakarna twice.
I mean it. He's the only professional support that plays Kumbhakarna still. Durgis is the only competitive support player that plays Kumbhakarna consistently. I personally like Kumbhakarna since he brings a lot of CC to the table, but if you don't land your combos, Kumbha doesn't offer enough mobility to be as competitive as a Bacchus or an Athena or definitely a Geb. And he played Ymir this week again, but he lost to Agilitas on his Ymir.
Yeah.
I think that if you ban Kumbhakarna against Durgis, he might play Kabrakan. He's very good on Kabrakan, but I haven't seen Durgis play the uber top tier supports, Athena and Geb, at the same level as someone like a Kanye Life. Even though Kanye Life doesn't play Geb or Athena very much either.
Don't give Kanye Ymir, good lord.
I've been preaching that.
Once.
I've been preaching that since about week 3 of the Smite World Championships.
Got him once and won with it.
Ymir. It's a bad
Got him
idea.
once and won with it. So just looking at the stats, top farmer actually going to Badja, farming at 512 GPM. Second, followed up by Kanye Life at 462, Princess Tomatoes at 427, and Durgius at 417. But if we look over at the damage taken and damage mitigated, average damage mitigated per minute going to Kanye Life at 826, Durgius 786, Princess Tomatoes 831, Badja 596. But the damage mitigation is where it's at. Kanye Life mitigating 661 damage per minute across 3 games and 80 minutes. The second closest was, let's see, who was second closest?
Second closest was Durgis at 492.
Yeah.
I think the problem with Kumbha is when it gets to late game and you're starting to contest over Fire Giants, he has to put himself in a lot of danger. And he has great initiation and great pill, but they don't necessarily go with each other because he's all about separating one single individual from the team fight. And even though he's got his great mez, which is an awesome ability and it's way too long in my opinion, but I don't know, it seems like he gets focused hard by like the mage hunter combo when he goes in and your team's not in the right position. He gets killed so fast compared
that happened 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
If you compare him to like a Geb, a Geb can blink in, initiate. You got the whole team converging in. Where he's only taking one person out of the fight with his ult, and then he messes everybody. But it's just not the same reaction, I guess you could say.
So the one thing you can do, which is really great with Kumbhakarna, is you can kind of take the other support out just as the Fire Giant gets in hog range. So you have some ways of making it great, but yeah, definitely he is one of the harder supports to make efficient during those fights, and he is the only support who really needs the right combo to support him and his abilities in order to not be useless.
When you talk about GPM, that 8-minute Coast SK game where Badja had a GPM of 608 really kind of skewed that out of proportion. But what I want to talk about is player damage. It's not really a stat you normally talk about in support, but Badja led at 254 over 60 rated the next closest being Princess Tomato of Coast. Sorry, not third. And I think a lot of that's due to the Bacchus belly flop belch combo and then the knockup on Geb, which is super, super strong. And knockups in this game in general are a very strong ability because it's a disruption.
You can't do anything about it. Once you're in the air, you're in the air.
Yep.
Strongest
damage-
CC in the game, hands
but
down.
damage
Oh
wise,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
super strong.
It does super high damage for being a
That's
tank,
also
and it interrupts anything that you're doing.
easy way to deal with Afro. Just get lots of knock-ups. You can't ult.
Yeah,
Can't ult, can't heal, can't back off, can't stun,
Yes.
and that's like everything she does.
the last thing want to talk about when it comes to supports is just how few times Kanye Life died this week. He died 10 times. Badger died 7, which was even fewer. But 10 times in 3 games for as active a support Kanye Life was this week, he was involved in so many team fights. He had 43 assists. That alone tells you just how high the assist numbers are in a week.
And he still has highest damage mitigated. Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had highest damage mitigated
So
and it wasn't close.
yeah, so that just shows you that he will
did his
take the
job.
hits for the team,
Yep.
but we will back him up. That's
Dude.
the way it's supposed to work.
This is the greatest walls universe. I swear.
In Scott's words, he did his job.
That I think
I-
y'all were over on the solo lane, and he threw up that wall to
Mhm.
prevent him from going back into the tower. And this is like
Yeah.
they just gave up. I was like, "Yep, I'm stuck. I'm done."
We were praising the walls
Yeah,
that game, that's
amazing.
for sure.
Yeah, it probably would have been a lot of fun to be in comms for that one.
That was just a-
We-
that
there
one
was a
game.
few laughs.
Man.
Cool. Well, let's head on over into mid and see where we stand in middle lane using our hybrid score here. First place is going to go to Pretty Prime. Agilitas dominating the stats this week.
Woo.
Captain Twig taking second. So one of our leading mid laners in the SPL a few weeks actually. Arrow from Potato Boys taking third at 1365, and Carino coming in at 1205, fourth place. So everybody performing moderately well,
Yep.
all in all in the mid lane. 1300, 1400, right where you want to be. Pretty much everybody there. And you want to dish out a lot of player damage as a mid. Arrow dishing out the most player damage at 712, and also dealing out the second most structure damage overall. Although third most structure damage per minute. So
Yeah,
Pick that as
Arrow's
crazy.
first game
Mhm.
today was amazing. And Pretty Prime's heals were on spot, his slows were on spot.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Pretty Prime's heals, he played Isis and Raw twice. His healing was off the charts better than everyone else. I mean, Arrow's the only other person to play a healer, and he only played a healer in one game. I think there needs to be more healers mid if it's that successful.
Yeah.
The only reason they lost that game with Isis is there were a couple of circle protections he missed. Honestly, if the circle protections were popped just a little bit sooner, his healing numbers would have jumped off the charts, would have secured a couple of kills, would have healed the rest of his team. Isis is a very interesting character to talk about in mid. If you land the circle of protections and the spirit balls consistently, you'll win every game.
Well,
But if you don't, she doesn't offer a lot outside of that.
That's something that I saw earlier today. I heard, DM and the casters talking about why is Ra not banned more? Why is people letting him through? He's such a strong character. I understand that, but if you ban Ra,
you're leaving way too much open.
yeah, you're gonna have either an Isis and those spirit balls,
Vulcan?
man, or Vulcan. Yeah,
Vulcan,
I mean, and especially in the
love
EU side,
Vulcan.
man. And I just wish the NA would pick up more on the Isis play, because if you ban a Ra, Isis is, I know she's easily gankable, but if you can babysit her, oh my god, dude, those spirit
The
balls.
thing with Isis is she is hard to make efficient if she's falling behind.
Yeah.
not a
yeah.
good god when behind. Not just plain and simple. I would say Vulcan also similar. Not a good god when behind. Actually, they're pretty comparable for me. That their ults are super hard to hit. They both have good CC and very good damage. Now Isis has better clear early, and Vulcan is better late. But honestly, for me, the two are a little bit more interchangeable than people think. Because mechanically, those are the two hardest mids to play in the game.
Yeah, definitely. Like Isis is so hard to play perfectly.
But when you do
And-
play it perfectly, it's absurd.
It really shines. Yeah.
I'm waiting to see Sao play Isis. in solo.
Once you get that quadra pentakill with the Isis ult, you You never want to play Ra again.
And it's such a good objective ult too, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a great
put that down on
ult.
the fight end
Yeah.
and let it just tick up.
In the words of F. Dot, when he talks about Odin, when you want to secure an objective, put a ring on it. I know Odin mid was played this week. Didn't work, but there are other mid gods with rings. Vulcan, if you want an objective, use Earthshaker from full range. You want to secure an objective, use Circle of Protection at full popping, and then you pop it.
Yeah.
Kills everything.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about farm in mid, farm is super important because now with all the sharing between junglers and the mid laners, Pretty Prime is very close to 500 at 498. Second behind Captain Twig at 519. But again, you take out that 8-minute coast game, and Pretty Prime leads in GPM. The 8-minute coast game really skewed all of SK stats.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, they skewed their stats a lot.
Yeah, it can. The nice part is that having two other games, it's going to deviate towards the mean. It's going to go towards the average still. So we still have a pretty close average, and after next week, it will be even more accurate. More games you play.
And actually, the only place where it really skewed its stats ahead is GPM. The rest of it skewed their stats behind. So all of SK's players would have scored higher had that game lasted longer. Especially when you look at the fact that Odin falls off super hard. Honestly, Odin is not what he used to be. People stop picking Odin. Particularly, please don't pick Odin mid.
Yeah. He was a niche pick. Like, right when he was remade, everyone was freaking out about him. But suddenly people started relaxing. Oh, wait. He's just like Chuck if you build him ability-based. He falls off. His ability starts
Again, to quote
not
F.
doing the damage he needs to.
Again, to quote F. Dot, it's the Thanatos effect. He falls off when it comes to 15 to 18 minutes.
Definitely.
I kind of agree with his. All right, if you don't ban Ra and the enemy team picks Ra, I kind of agree with his counter pick because you can kind of. You can not use the ult to secure a kill, but you can use the ult to zone out Ra. All right, because Ra's not going to buy combat blink. He's probably going to either get Heavenly Agility or something else. Yeah. So
Agility or Beej or Aegis, depending on who he's landing against.
So not only can you get him away from the team fight, you can just sit there. But the problem with that is if your support is sitting there fighting a Ra and zoning him out of the team fight, you got to be ahead and let so your carries can deal with the support in your face, and the carries doing their thing. But I kind of agree with it in a way, but I still think he's kind of a weak pick. Geb is still, he should be banned every game. I don't know why anybody would let Geb in. I would rather fight a Vamana. I would rather fight a Chalk.
I'd rather fight a Serket than a Geb.
Yeah, I'd rather
For
fight
me,
anything.
that's saying something.
Well, Odin is definitely going to be picked up in situational games because he is a situational god. Like, there will be specific combos that he just is OP, plain OP against, and he will have his shining moments. It's just a very specific pick. He does specific things. He's very good at it. His ult's 100% healing reduction with attack speed reduction as well. Very good to shut down a Vamana, for example. Hint, hint. But nah, we're not picking Odin.
Where's the Zeus? Where's Zeus been? He's got.
Don't get me started.
He's still strong, but I will tell you that the fact that it's no longer a stun on his 3.
I
is what
know,
sold it.
but God, the damage is so strong, man.
I mean,
It
I
can
didn't.
be.
It's
Talk
so
to
Lemons
stupid.
about his Fatalis Zeus.
I didn't like
talk-
Zeus when he was ridiculously OP, so I'm never gonna play him again.
I understand that, but I mean, if you could get Zeus to have a finished rod, like, let's say 23-minute mark of the game,
The damage is gonna be disgusting.
it's so stupid, man. I mean, once he passes the threshold, his 3 is, if he gets a 1-off in a team fight, that's GG. Just.
But it's so hard to hit, though.
I don't
It's
know.
still harder to hit than an Astral.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's just I just yes, Yes, I'm glad it's not a stun anymore because I was so sick. But still, man, even in casual queues, uh,
The slow might be stronger in some situations.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
debatable.
I mean,
The same.
especially let's say you got Callie, going insane late game, and you got that slow to keep her from engaging. If her jump is down, it's different, gods. But I understand. This game is so CC based and so slow based. That's the reason sprint's still an item. Which, if it
Yeah.
wasn't an item, I mean, this game would be completely different. But still,
Yeah.
slows are
It would be
so
viable.
overpowered in this game, and I hate to use that word, but slow is still good. Even knockups are better, but slow is still really, really, really good.
All right, well, that wraps us up on the mid laners. Let's go over into solo lane. And since we have Confrey here, why don't you tell us our solo lane players who took first, second, third, and fourth this week?
Yeah, sure. So coming up at number 1, we have Maniac with the amazing performance this week. And number 2 is myself, Confrey. And at number 3, we have Proxy. And coming in at the last spot, number 4, we have Verity.
Yep, Toast having some struggles, and Maniac having one phenomenal
All 3 Vamana games.
breakout games. Played Fomana all 3 times, won all 3 times. Of course, game 3 having a very, very low score, but chalked up to the very, 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 very short amount of game time.
Legitimately, one stat won him the entire week. One stat. And it's damage mitigation. He had 853 damage mitigated per minute. Next closest being Proxy QQ at 387. That damage mitigation per minute numbers is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, higher than all of the supports that played this week for their averages.
I mean, you just can't kill the baby.
No, it's impossible
No.
to kill Fomana unless you
Especially
get
not as a mage. A mage just can't deal with it.
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to get a hyper carry on that job.
And I can confirm his mitigation is higher than any other support. And just for those wondering, it didn't happen in game 3, where you might think things would have been skewed. It happened in game 2, which lasted for 30 minutes, not 8. So
Game 1 was over 1,000.
Wow, I was reading that as 100. He had over 1,000 in game 1.
in one
Wow.
game.
Yeah, and that's only late game.
So
something
I have
that
to
I
ask-
think
Go ahead.
there's 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
2 things, and this right here, it may be totally void and null, and we can kick it out. But in my personal experience of watching it and playing it, there's 2 gods I think that counter him. 2 gods.
Okay.
One is Tyr. And I know Tyr is very situational, but I think Tyr can out-farm Vamana, and he can keep Vamana on the same playing field, in other words, because you can't stop his farm. That's understandable. I know that.
Hey, you can't stop his farm, but unless you have a
and-
jungler here, you're never going to kill him.
And there's one other one, Boxer.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So should we start
I
with
buy that.
Tyr? Should we talk about that for a sec?
Let's
Sure,
let's
go for
go.
it.
All right. So Tyr, I definitely see the potential to dominate Vamana in lane, but what are you gonna do once the builds are complete? What is a Tyr gonna do against the Vamana? Not
Doesn't
much.
get there.
Once the baby gets big, you can't really peel for your team. You can't take him on head on. You can only really run away from him, and
Yep.
Vamana is gonna be way faster than you. So that's
Palace and what is it now? Frostbound Hammer?
yeah.
Good luck running away from that unless you have
Or if he builds sprint, if he's ahead. Good lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta think about the late game and how you're gonna deal with the certain combos, and Tyr's just very hard to make efficient
Yeah.
late game.
And I think Bakasur can shut him down early, but then if it ever gets to the late game, Bakasur's useless.
Well,
Okay,
Bakasur
so
is not fantastic late
Baka-
regardless.
Baka is nasty against Vamana early on.
Yeah.
The true damage is so great, especially if Vamana tries to make his passive useful.
Yeah.
The more prod you get, the more power you get.
Yeah.
So Baka just completely ignores that. Not completely, but he's the best guard against bruisers who go for physical defense.
And guess who
Um,
was not picked once this week in EU wildcards or
That's
banned?
because he was auto-banned. There's a glitch with him right now.
Oh yeah, yep.
There's a great game-breaking bug.
Irez.
Yeah, not gonna go into detail about that because
So, when you just look at how people play solo in NA versus EU, the only person that I really saw play super aggressive was Proxy. And Proxy picked Shibalanke in the solo lane, and then Serket in the solo lane. So it's not really all that surprising. Now, Shibalanke, I really like Shibalanke in modes that aren't Conquest.
yeah, I have no comment. I know
I
Siblanque
like Proxy, but seriously, your Vamana play was absurd. I think you had a 1900 over 1900 average for that one game, 1936 on Vamana. Why don't you just play more Vamana, man?
Well, I think that game was very situational, and
Okay.
I'm glad he actually done that because we finally got to see what a 6-slotted Shablanque can do late game, which was retarded.
Yeah, man, his ult is so great.
His ult is one of the strongest ults in the game. I can't tell you how many times I have people tell me, "Oh, Shibalanke's ult is useless."
And
no.
The way it was used with the rest of his team, like the Thor dunks, the Nuwa ults, you just completely panic on the enemy team when everything starts dropping down.
Casters say this all the time. Shibalanke, if you can get to late game, is super strong, especially with that passive, because he's got fantastic true damage.
True.
But his laning phase is so
bad.
weak. I guess you can play him in the solo lane if you're Proxy, but...
Well, no. Well, I mean, the whole team set him up for that. I mean, they kind of pushed him to that point. So
why, if you're gonna go Siblanque solo, why do you pick Ola for duo? Why not go something else? Why do you need two ADCs? Yeah,
exactly.
Do something else to make it more useful.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong with Proxy playing Siblanque in solo if he can get out of the laning phase, and he obviously did that just fine. So.
Okay.
All right, well, that covers up solo lane. Let's go ahead and head on into jungle with first place this week going to go to Repikas from Agilitas. Is that how you say it, Repikas?
Yeah, Repikas.
Okay, cool. So you have different pronunciations. So I want to make sure I had it right. Repikas at 1641, head and shoulders above everybody. Zeros at 1287, almost 400 below Repikas.
Adapt was 400 below Repikas at
Yeah, and he was in third. Second place was actually Zindern at 1329.
Formerly
and last place is Adapting at 1221.
Wow.
So
I mean, just
player on coast that played really well was Zindern.
Yeah,
Zindern left after that 8-minute game.
Yes, he did.
So.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely tried his best in these last games. I think he has left Team Coast now. Is that correct?
He did. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, he definitely tried till the end.
Great freelance jungler if anyone wants him. I mean, I've been on the Zindern bandwagon since I saw him on Squiddish like a year and a half.
He's a great guy. Like, we miss him, all of us on the team, and he's a great player. So I definitely wish the best for him in the future.
Yeah, we all do. So looking,
Repikas killed it, literally.
Let's look. Repikas is what we need to talk about here. Of course, we all wish best of luck to Zindern, but Repikas going 18, 6, and 38 in 80 minutes of gameplay.
That's almost an assist every 2 minutes.
Yep. All those kill steals, man. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, somebody sounds salty.
No.
Don't make me put in the salt shaker.
61 structure damage per minute. He actually was second to Zindern in damage mitigation, and it wasn't really close. Zindern at 500, he was third, Adapting at 289, and Repikas at 284. I just think overall it was super strong. He played, at least in my opinion, 3 of the strongest junglers in the game: Hunbots, Kali, and Sir Crit. Yeah. And he performed well with all of them. Even in the loss when he was playing Hunbots, he played very well.
Yeah.
He went 6-2 and 9.
Played amazing.
That having
Cali
one game going 17-77. That's the highest single individual score, too.
That Cali game was retarded, man. It was.
Kali.
It was so funny too because if you were watching it, the announcers were talking about what just happened, and then all of a sudden, Repicas got his target kill, and they're like, "What just happened?"
Oh. Twin size balanced, apparently.
I mean, I remember y'all were at the Left Phoenix, and Nemesis came in to do something, and then a second and a half later, Nemesis disappeared. It was like, she like, I mean, he stunned and two'd, and she was gone.
Yeah.
The caster said this in game. That was the fastest full clear of everything in competitive Smite history.
All towers gone.
All towers, Gold Fury, Fire Giant, everything.
Everything was done.
Competitive Smite game.
17 and a half minutes.
But 17 and a half minutes.
So that's what happens when you get Noir dominating one lane and the rest of the team just sieging the other lane. So you get like a full clear on both sides. And it's just so hard to deal with. Yeah.
It was awesome to watch. Awesome to watch.
So
yeah.
I can't even imagine how it must have felt in that team fight once Kali got her target. Because you knew you were winning that team fight. Kali gets her target, and she's now at full health, and whether she has mana or not, if she has Keen, she just shreds everyone.
So people say that Kali is a pop stomper. She's a ranked guard. That's commonly said. Like she can do a lot of stuff on her own. But I really believe that Kali is one of the greatest guards if you have a plan. If you can communicate to your team who your target is and how you're gonna manage this team fight, Kali can just do so much work. And if you communicate who takes the last hit, of course.
Yeah. I saw that in two specific team fights, and I would love to have been in your team chat because I saw her take the last hits when it could easily have been one basic attack by somebody else, even the mage, and all of a sudden just Replica slides in. Okay, I'll get this. Yeah, thanks.
We make sure to be that we all are aware of who the targets are, so we can plan out how to take it out. And it's so hard to deal with once you get Kali going.
Awesome work.
To bring up one final thing before we talk about predictions for next week's Wildcards, I would like to talk a little bit about adapting. Now, adapting brought up the rear in jungle scores this week, and he wasn't mentioned a lot by casters. He didn't really have these insane plays, and Potato Boys needed a lot more from adapting than they got. Now, Potato Boys has had the wrong end of the stick from Agilitas a lot. Like,
I still think Adapting did great.
Adapting is a great player.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how
I think he's a fantastic player.
No matter how hard Potato Boys lose, Adapting is always doing work. He's never feeding. He's always, almost always positive. Like, we respect Adapting a lot as a player. And that's also why he's focused in our drafting stage. You would see us ban Thor, you'd see us ban Merc, stuff like that. Like, just to take away the strongest initiating guards on his pool. So we definitely respect the player.
He's really good at forcing ganks. That's something I saw today. That's something I was actually going to mention when he was naming off our scores this week. I saw all three of his games today, and I thought he played exceptionally well for a jungler. One, maybe some of his, I guess is because, two of the games that they were a little bit behind in, but he was ahead as the jungler in the first 10 to 12 minutes of the game in almost all three of his games. He was ahead in gold, and I can understand that, why you respect him, because he's really good at farm, and he's one of the best at initiations. He reminds me a lot, especially on his Thor, he reminds me a lot of Thorgars. I mean,
the guys.
But,
the one and only Thor.
The only true Thor.
Our God and Savior, right?
Our Lord and Savior Thor. That video.
But but I mean, Adapting plays super well, even though he finished up last in the jungle scores this week. I thought he played very well, and I wish him all the best in the future. I really like to watch him play.
So to talk about our predictions for next week's Wildcards, tentative for scheduling and that kind of stuff. The first game we have is Agilitas SK, and I am taking Agilitas over SK because Agilitas outplayed SK Gaming in that game, and they threw. I'm sorry, y'all threw. Y'all threw really hard.
I would not say we threw. I would say we failed to adapt to the late game.
Okay.
We didn't throw.
Semantics. But okay. So
regardless, Agilitas outplayed SK up until that point.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I said this. I think I messaged y'all this earlier. I called this last week. I think Agilitas will take the Wildcards by storm. It's just because of not only the person we have with us today in the solo lane, but I think it's because they have the best team synergy, which is something that we hit on a bunch last week.
I would agree.
Sorry about that.
Not just because I'm a Agilitas fanboy, which I am.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I really love watching the EU, even though the NA is at home. But I really love watching the EU because there's not a dominant team. There's not CoG just stomping face on everybody. I think Agilitas, you guys could beat anybody in the SPL.
I think they could beat anyone in the SPL, including the CoG you were talking about.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give it to Agilitas on that one.
Well,
It is definitely either one's game, I'd say.
Yep. No, I agree, Agilitas.
All right, the next game we have is, I guess, what becomes a classic Smite matchup: Potato Boys against Agilitas. And I'm sorry, Confrey, I am actually picking the upset this week, merely on the basis of I think Potato Boys gets on a roll because when they actually pick conventional gods, they're really good. For me, they're very similar to the Chunks in NA.
When does Potato Boys pick conventional gods?
They picked conventional god. They picked conventional gods against Agilitas this week, and at least for the first 20 minutes, they were winning.
Yeah, but it's not conventional when it gets to late game.
Fine.
It's definitely not impossible to take a loss. We've lost against them before, so definitely a team we should respect. And yeah, the battle goes on. Either one.
I think this one depends on, and I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. If SunTouch can get fed early, he can actually carry a game. He's a really, really good player. He's got really great positioning. And then sometimes I think when he's not fed, he gets out of position because he thinks he's all right. Well, I'll change this whole team fight by doing this.
Saw that a couple times today.
But I'm still gonna have to give this to Agilitas. I still think they just take the Wildcards by storm, man.
Wolfpack?
Yeah, I agree. I think Agilitas takes the Wildcard by storm. I think they make it in. So I give this one to Agilitas. Although Potato Boys, I think, will make it a very tough fight.
Yep.
And then then the last game we'll cover is Potato Boys and SK Gaming. And I am taking the Potato Boys again. I think Potato Boys get a 3-0 week, and I am expecting a 3-way tie at the top.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
Please, my heart.
Which means we get bonus smite, which is really what I'm pulling for.
Gotcha.
I'm an Agilitas fanboy, but I want bonus smite. I want Agilitas to go all the way.
Who's going to win
Honestly,
the last game?
Them to, but I'm picking Potato Boys over SK Gaming.
So in the 3-way tie, who's going to make it?
I'm expecting Agilitas and Potato Boys.
That's what
I think that Reels...
You just want to hear Agilitas. You don't care about this.
I think that Casters talked a lot about Reels. Reels is a fantastic player. Who they didn't mention nearly enough was Maniac. Maniac was the player that carried them this week. You focus down Maniac, you beat SK Gaming.
I don't think so, man. I think Reels stepped it up hardcore.
I think they stepped it up too, but they didn't talk nearly enough about Maniac.
I think Agilitas and SK go to the regional finals.
All right. Regional finals.
Yeah, well, you know,
You mean
Sorry.
regionals. Yeah, my bad. Regionals, my bad.
Okay. We'll see what happens when they get to regionals. But I'm going to give this one over to SK, actually. I think SK is going to pull out this win. I have faith in Real ZX. I have faith in him and his team, and I think SK comes out on top on this one.
All right. Well, that covers our wildcard review for week 1. We got one more week to go, and we'll see who goes to regionals.
Yep, and we absolutely will be covering regionals. And for those of you who haven't heard yet, Scotch and I will also be covering Worlds at location. We will both be there. We have our legendary passes, and we'll be covering it for you. So make sure you give us a follow on Twitter at NextWave Gaming. You can visit our website, nextwavegaming.com, and subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/nextwavegaming for future videos. We previously were on Next Wave Gaming 2 because of some tech issues and some problems with the channel, but that's all sorted out now. So make sure you follow us over there. From everyone at Next Wave Gaming, thank you, Confrey, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
No problem.
And I hope you guys all enjoyed it. First, CrimsonWhite, Scott737, and myself, and everyone else at Next Wave Gaming, thanks for watching, and we will see you next week for the final wrap-up for the Wildcards to see who goes into regionals. See you guys next week.